You see, people love to confuse volume with victory. They think the louder they talk, the more they're being heard. But that's not confidence. That's insecurity dressed up as control. Real confidence doesn't need a microphone. It doesn't need chaos to be seen. It's calm, it's steady, it's the kind of energy that walks into a room and shifts the atmosphere without saying a word. When you know who you are and what you stand for, you don't have to shout it, you live it, and that silence. That calm composure, it makes the ones who rely on noise start to panic. Because they realize their loudness can't shake your peace, their insults can't touch your focus, and their performance can't match your power. That's the kind of confidence that terrifies people who build their worth on attention instead of intention. It's funny how quick people are to label you when they can't understand you. The moment you speak with passion, they call you angry. The moment you refuse to stay silent, they say you're aggressive, but what they're really seeing is someone who refuses to let lies go unchecked. They're not used to a voice that doesn't tremble when challenged, a woman who stands tall even when they try to talk over her. Passion isn't anger, it's purpose with fire behind it, and the only reason they try to twist it is because your confidence exposes their insecurity. They want you quiet, they want you polite, they want you small. Because your strength reminds them of everything they're lacking. But you don't owe anyone a softer version of yourself just to make their comfort zone feel safe. You speak how truth demands to be spoken, clear, fierce, and unapologetically real. See, people love to walk into a debate thinking confidence alone will carry them, but confidence without preparation is just noise waiting to be exposed. You can't fake facts and you can't bluff your way through truth. When I step into a room, I don't come to perform. I come ready with every detail, every receipt, every fact lined up and waiting. Because preparation is power, it's the difference between reacting and leading, between defending yourself and dismantling nonsense. And when you've done your homework, when you know your ground, you don't need to raise your voice, you just raise the standard. Every word becomes a strike of truth, every fact becomes a mirror that forces them to face what they try to deny. That's why arrogance always falls. It walks in loud, but it walks out silent, because preparation doesn't just win arguments, it ends them. Truth doesn't need to put on a show, it doesn't need lights, applause, or fancy words to make an impact. The truth walks in plain and powerful, it doesn't perform, it proves. You can dress up a lie, wrap it in a speech, sprinkle it with attitude, and parade it around like it's something real. But when truth steps forward, all that pretending starts to crumble. Because truth carries a kind of weight that can't be faked. It doesn't need permission, it doesn't need validation, and it sure doesn't need to shout. It just exists, unbothered, unshaken, undeniable. And when it speaks, even the loudest voices have to go quiet. See, that's what separates those who chase attention from those who walk in purpose. Some people talk to be heard, others speak to be understood. When you're grounded in truth, you don't have to sell it, you show it. You don't have to perform for approval because truth doesn't seek applause, it commands respect. That's what rattles people who build their arguments on empty claims. They expect theatrics, they expect noise, they expect a battle of ego. But when all they get is calm certainty backed by fact, they don't know what to do with it. They freeze because you just stripped away the illusion they were hiding behind. And let me tell you, that's the real power of truth. It's not always loud, but it's always lasting. Lies can shine for a moment, but the truth burns forever. You can't out-talk it, you can't outspin it, you can't outrun it. The truth sits there, steady, patient, waiting for its moment to reveal itself. And when it does, every performance, every fake narrative, every exaggerated act falls apart under its light. People who live on lies are addicted to performance. They rehearse their talking points like actors on a stage, trying to convince the audience that fiction is fact. They'll raise their voices, twist their tone, throw out half-truths, and call it confidence, but what they don't understand is that truth doesn't rehearse, it remembers. It doesn't stumble because it doesn't have to keep track of its story. It's consistent every time you confront it. That's why those who deal in truth never have to worry about being caught off guard. We speak from reality, not rehearsal. So when that man came at me with his talking points, his staged outrage, and his little performance meant to get attention, I just watched. Because I already knew, when someone relies on theatrics, it's because they don't have substance. You can tell when a person's argument is built on truth and when it's built on noise. Truth doesn't flinch, doesn't rush, doesn't fold under pressure. It doesn't get emotional when challenged. It just stands there and lets evidence do the talking. And the moment you realize that, you stop trying to outshout people. You just outsmart them. That's why I never feel the need to match somebody's volume. You can scream, you can posture, you can point all the fingers you want, but at the end of the day, truth will still be standing when you're out of breath. Because truth is not a performance, it's a presence. It's what gives your words their weight, your actions their integrity, and your voice its authority. Without it, everything else is just noise echoing into emptiness. And let me say this, truth doesn't care about your position, your title, or your platform. It's not impressed by power, and it's not intimidated by it either. You can be a senator, a CEO, or someone with a microphone trying to sound important, but if your words aren't grounded in truth, they'll collapse under the smallest question. That's why I always tell people, don't get caught up trying to look right. Focus on being right. Because when the truth is on your side, you don't have to perform for anyone. Your credibility speaks before you do. And that's what I did in that debate. I didn't need to shout or make a scene. I let the facts breathe. I let the truth speak for itself, because the truth doesn't compete, it completes. It fills every gap that lies create. It exposes every corner that arrogance tries to hide behind. It brings light to places people hoped would stay dark. That's what real power looks like, not domination, not volume, not theatrics, but the quiet, undeniable force of what's real. The truth is like a mirror. It doesn't change what it reflects, it just shows you what's there, and the people who fear it the most are the ones who can't handle their own reflection. They'll try to break the mirror, to distort the image, to distract the audience, but all they're doing is proving that the truth hit a nerve. Because when you speak truth, it doesn't just challenge their argument, it challenges their comfort. It forces them to face the reality they've been hiding from. I've learned that when you stand for truth, you have to be prepared to stand alone sometimes. Because people who live in illusions will try to isolate you, ridicule you, or silence you, but don't let that shake you. The truth doesn't lose value because it's unpopular. It doesn't become false because people reject it. If anything, rejection only proves how necessary it is, because truth will always outlast lies. It may take time, but it will always rise. And here's the thing, truth doesn't need defenders, it needs believers. People who will hold their ground even when it's uncomfortable, who will speak it even when it's risky, who will live it even when no one's watching. Because truth isn't something you just say, it's something you embody. You live it in your choices, in your character, in the way you treat people, in the way you refuse to back down when deception tries to dominate the conversation. When I'm in those moments, when someone's trying to twist my words, raise their voice, or drown me out, I remind myself this isn't a stage and I'm not performing. I'm not here to entertain, I'm here to enlighten, and once you understand that, once you realize that truth is not a performance but a proof of who you are, everything changes. You stop arguing for approval and start standing for principle. You stop reacting to nonsense and start revealing it. That's why the truth is dangerous to those who build their power on deceit, because the moment it shows up, it dismantles everything they've built. Lies can manipulate, but they can't sustain. They might win the crowd for a moment, but the truth wins history every time. You can't rewrite it, you can't silence it, and you sure can't defeat it with attitude, because truth doesn't need a defense, it is the defense. So when he came at me thinking he could corner me with words, I didn't have to fight back with noise. I just laid out the facts, one by one, like dominoes, and watched as every false claim he made fell flat. No shouting, no performance, no drama, just precision, because that's how truth works, quietly, consistently, and completely. It dismantles arrogance not by attacking it, but by revealing it for what it is, empty. That's why I tell people, don't waste your breath arguing with those who perform instead of listen. Let them act, let them posture, you just stand in your truth. Because when the spotlight fades, when the audience moves on, and when the noise dies down, what's left standing will always be what's real. And that's why truth is freedom. When you live in it, no one can use lies to control you. When you speak it, no one can distort your purpose. When you embody it, no one can strip you of your credibility. Truth liberates you from the need to perform, from the pressure to please, from the trap of trying to prove your worth to people who never intended to see it. So let them talk, let them perform, let them make their scene, because while they're busy entertaining, you'll be busy enlightening. While they chase the spotlight, you'll be creating impact, and when the dust settles, the truth will still be standing, calm, unshaken, undefeated. Because at the end of every debate, every argument, every illusion, there's one thing that always remains the undeniable, unbreakable, unbothered truth. And here's the thing about arrogance. It always walks in like it owns the place, but it never realizes how fragile it really is. Arrogance looks confident until it runs into someone who actually knows what they're talking about. It looks powerful until it's forced to stand next to truth, because arrogance can make a lot of noise, but it can't make a point that holds up under pressure. The moment you shine a light on it, the cracks start to show, and when the facts start stacking up, all that bravado starts to melt away. You can see it in their eyes, the shift from loud certainty to quiet panic, because deep down, they know they didn't come prepared for a real conversation. They came hoping the performance would distract from their lack of substance. When arrogance meets evidence, it's like fire meeting water. It fizzles out fast. They can't argue with receipts, they can't argue with logic, and they can't argue with consistency. Because truth doesn't flinch when you raise your voice, it just waits for you to finish so it can prove you wrong with a single sentence. And that's the beauty of it. Arrogance thrives on illusion, but evidence destroys illusion. It turns all that chest, puffing, and grandstanding into silence. You can almost feel the energy shift in the room when that happens, when people realize the loudest person isn't the smartest, and the calmest one just dropped the truth that ended the show. Arrogance likes to believe it's untouchable. It walks in thinking it can talk over you, intimidate you, dominate the moment. But what it forgets is that knowledge doesn't bow to noise. When you stand in truth, you don't have to match arrogance, you expose it. You don't have to get louder, you just get clearer, because clarity cuts through chaos every single time. And when arrogance realizes it can't rattle you, it loses its power. It feeds off reaction, it craves validation, but when it meets composure grounded in truth, it starves. That's exactly what happened when he tried to debate me. He came in swinging with attitude, thinking he could throw me off balance. But arrogance isn't strategy, it's insecurity disguised as confidence, and the moment I started laying out the facts, he had nowhere to hide. Every word I spoke peeled back another layer of his act, and suddenly, all that confidence he walked in with started to crumble. Because arrogance can only stand tall in the absence of accountability, the minute you introduce evidence, it collapses under the weight of reality. And the truth is, arrogance hates accountability. It can't survive in a room where facts are present, where preparation is visible, where integrity is louder than ego. Arrogance needs chaos, it needs distraction, it needs you to play its game. But when you stay calm, when you stay grounded, when you refuse to get dragged into the performance, arrogance doesn't know what to do with you. It starts to stumble, repeat itself, raise its voice, because it's running out of ways to pretend it's winning. That's when it falls apart, not because you attacked it, but because you outgrew it. See, arrogance might get attention, but truth gets results. And in the end, that's what exposes every pretender. They talk, they posture, they exaggerate, but results don't lie. When arrogance faces truth, there's nowhere left to hide, no crowd loud enough to drown out the facts. The truth is patient, it doesn't rush to prove itself, it just waits for arrogance to burn out, and it always does. Every single time. Composure is a kind of power most people don't understand until they run into it. See, some folks mistake calm for weakness, but calm is actually control. It's knowing that you don't have to match someone's chaos to defeat it. You ever notice how people get loud when they start losing their grip? That's because they think volume equals power. But real power is when you can look someone dead in the eye while they're trying to throw you off, and you don't even flinch. You let them spin themselves in circles while you stand steady, watching, waiting, knowing that when you speak, every word will hit harder because it's not coming from emotion. It's coming from truth. When I sat there and he started getting louder, waving his hands, interrupting like that would somehow make him right, I didn't budge. I've learned that when you know what you're talking about, you don't have to prove it by performing, you prove it by staying unshaken. And that silence, that composure, it rattles people who rely on chaos to control the narrative because they're used to reactions. They're used to shouting matches, but when you don't give them that energy, when you keep your peace while they lose theirs, you take away their power. That's when you can see the shift. They realize they're no longer in charge of the moment, and that's what composure does. It flips the power dynamic without you even raising your voice. It's not about being passive, it's about being intentional. It's the understanding that your calm isn't silence, it's strategy. You're not ignoring the noise, you're outlasting it, because the person who stays calm controls the pace, controls the tone, controls the outcome. Every second you remain grounded, their chaos starts working against them. They start stumbling over their own words, revealing what they don't know, showing everyone that the storm they tried to create can't shake someone who stands in truth. Composure is confidence under pressure. It's saying, I don't need to yell you, I'll think you. It's when you let your intelligence speak louder than your emotions. That's something arrogance can't compete with, because arrogance needs reaction to survive. It needs you to get flustered so it can feed off that energy. But when you stay poised, when you keep your tone steady, when you refuse to get dragged into their noise, arrogance starts to shrink. You can literally watch it deflate in real time, and let me tell you something, when you've got composure, you make people question themselves. They start wondering why they can't shake you, why their insults don't land, why their performance isn't working. That's when you know you've won the room, not because you shouted the loudest, but because you stayed the strongest. Your calm becomes contagious. People start listening to you because you've got control of your energy. And when you control your energy, you control everything that happens next. That's why I say composure is louder than any argument. You don't need to raise your voice when you've already raised your standard. You don't need to interrupt when the truth is on your side. The calmest person in the room is always the one with the most power, because they're the one who refuses to give chaos a seat at the table. And once you realize that grace under pressure is the ultimate power move, you never let anyone's noise disrupt your peace again. Strong voices have always made weak minds uncomfortable. That's just the truth. The moment you speak with clarity, confidence, and conviction, people who depend on confusion start to panic. They don't know what to do when you can't be silenced or intimidated. They'll try to label you, twist your words, and call your strength aggression, because acknowledging your power would mean admitting their own insecurity. And I've seen it time and time again. When you speak with purpose, people who live in pretense will always feel threatened. Because your voice doesn't just challenge their argument, it challenges their comfort. There's something about an unshaken, unapologetic voice that exposes fragility. When you know what you're talking about, when you walk in your truth, you shine a light on every person pretending they belong in that conversation. And that's why they come for you, not because you're wrong, but because you remind them of everything they're not. They can't stand the mirror you hold up to their mediocrity, and rather than face that reflection, they attack the messenger. But what they fail to realize is that silencing one voice doesn't stop the truth, it just proves how powerful it is. I've learned that intimidation is the last tool of those who have nothing left to say. When they can't outthink you, they'll try to outshout you. When they can't out-debate you, they'll try to distract you. But when you refuse to bend, when you refuse to lower yourself to their level, they crumble under their own weakness. Because strength rooted in truth doesn't need to be loud. It's undeniable even in silence. That's why people who operate in lies can't handle someone grounded in purpose. You can't manipulate a mind that's clear, and you can't control a voice that knows its worth. And it's not just about speaking loudly, it's about speaking with impact. You could whisper the truth and it would still shake the room if it's coming from a place of authenticity. Weak minds hate that kind of power because they can't fake it. They can imitate your tone, your style, even your confidence, but they can't replicate the substance behind it. And that's why they react with hostility. It's not you they're angry at. It's the mirror of inadequacy you hold up every time you open your mouth. But let me tell you, strong voices don't apologize for making people uncomfortable. Growth isn't supposed to feel comfortable. Change doesn't come from silence. Every time you speak truth to power, every time you stand up against hypocrisy, you're shaking foundations that were built on falsehoods. And the people who profit from those lies will always come after you. But don't let that make you small. Don't let their fear make you mute, because if they're threatened, it means you're doing something right. The reality is, weak minds don't fear noise, they fear clarity. They don't fear emotion, they fear reason. And the moment you bring both passion and precision into a conversation, you become unstoppable. You stop being just another voice, they start hearing you as a force. And that's when the tables turn. They can't dismiss you, they can't define you, and they can't deny you. Because no matter how hard they try to drown you out, the truth always echoes louder. So when I speak and someone tries to cut me off or belittle what I'm saying, I don't take it personally. I recognize it for what it is, a defense mechanism. It's fear dressed as arrogance, because the truth is, it takes strength to listen. It takes maturity to admit when you're wrong, and weak minds don't have that strength. They'd rather fight the voice that exposes their flaws than confront the flaws themselves. But here's the thing, they can interrupt your sentence, but they can't erase your message. They can challenge your tone, but they can't touch your truth. That's why every time I step into a room, I don't worry about who's comfortable. I worry about who's paying attention. Because the ones who can handle truth, the ones who are ready to grow, they're listening, and that's who I'm speaking to. The rest, they'll get loud, they'll roll their eyes, they'll try to twist my words, but that's fine. Because I'm not here to please the fragile, I'm here to empower the fearless, and if my voice shakes their comfort, then maybe it's time they ask themselves why. Knowledge is the one thing nobody can take from you, and that's exactly why it scares people who thrive on manipulation. When you know your facts, when you understand the system, when you come equipped with receipts and reason, you become untouchable. They can come for your tone, your attitude, your appearance, but they can't touch your truth when it's backed by knowledge. And that's what separates those who talk from those who teach. Because knowledge doesn't just help you win arguments, it helps you own them. You don't just react, you redirect. You don't just defend, you dismantle. Every time someone tries to twist the story, you straighten it out with clarity they can't compete with. I've seen it happen over and over. Someone walks in thinking confidence alone is enough, but the moment you hit them with cold, undeniable facts, their whole performance falls apart. Because confidence without comprehension is a ticking clock. It sounds loud for a while, but it's running out of time. Knowledge gives you patience, it gives you power, it lets you stay still while chaos burns around you because you already know how it ends. You've done your homework, you've studied the pattern, and you've mastered the playbook. So when ignorance walks in thinking it's the main act, you're already 5 steps ahead, calm and ready, because you've built your foundation on understanding, not assumption. And that's why I never fear a challenge. You can question me all day long, but I'm not coming with empty opinions. I'm coming with evidence. You can try to twist my words, but I'll untangle your entire argument before you even realize it. Because when you have knowledge, you don't argue, you educate. You turn confrontation into correction, ignorance into illumination, and the most dangerous kind of person is the one who can stay composed while dismantling lies one fact at a time. That's what knowledge gives you, the ability to fight without fighting, to lead without shouting, to win without gloating. People who live in ignorance think noise can overpower understanding, but it never does, because knowledge doesn't need attention, it commands respect. When you walk in informed, people have 2 choices. They either listen or expose themselves as unprepared. And that's the quiet beauty of it. You don't have to prove you're smart. Your preparation does it for you. Every statistic, every reference, every detail is a piece of armor that arrogance can't penetrate. And when you deliver truth wrapped in evidence, you leave no room for opinion to masquerade as fact. Knowledge gives you freedom. It frees you from being controlled by deception, frees you from being swayed by emotion, frees you from being silenced by intimidation. Because when you know the truth, you recognize lies before they even finish their sentence. You don't fall for theatrics because you've studied the play. You don't get caught in manipulation because you've mastered perspective. And that's why people who depend on ignorance hate informed minds, because you can't trick someone who's awake. When I walk into a debate, I'm not hoping to sound smart. I'm showing that I came prepared. I don't play defense. I take control of the narrative. Because the person with the most information always sets the tone. You can't win a battle of words against someone who knows how things actually work. That's what rattles them. They realize their script doesn't work anymore. They run out of talking points. They start repeating themselves. They start deflecting because deep down they know they're standing on air while you're standing on facts. Knowledge is confidence built on truth, not ego. It's what allows you to look arrogance in the eye and smile because you already know how it ends. It's not about memorizing words. It's about understanding systems, seeing through tactics, connecting the dots that others pretend don't exist. And once you have that, no one can shake you. They can question you, they can challenge you, but they can't move you because knowledge anchors you. It keeps you grounded in reality, even when everyone else is trying to sell illusion. And here's the thing. People who lack knowledge often mistake confidence for intelligence. But when you've done your research, when you know your facts, you realize intelligence isn't loud, it's strategic. It's precise, it's surgical. You don't need to use 1,000 words when 10 will do. You don't need to raise your voice when the evidence speaks louder than anything you could say. That's how you win, by being sharper, not louder, by knowing more, not showing off, by letting the truth, armed with knowledge, do the talking while you simply hold your ground. So yes, I study, I prepare, I come armed with information that can't be twisted, numbers that can't be denied, history that can't be rewritten. Because I know that knowledge is the one weapon ignorance can't disarm. It's the light that exposes every shadow, the armor that arrogance can't pierce. And when you walk with that kind of understanding, no matter how loud they get, no matter how wild the distraction, you'll always have the final word, because truth backed by knowledge doesn't argue. It ends the conversation. Sometimes the smartest thing you can do is let ignorance talk long enough to expose itself. You don't always have to jump in. You don't always have to correct every false statement the second it's said, because ignorance has a way of digging its own grave when you just let it run. It starts off loud and confident, but the longer it talks, the more it starts tripping over its own words. The contradictions come out, the exaggerations start showing, and the truth begins to leak through the cracks. All you have to do is stay patient and watch it unravel. That's the thing, ignorance doesn't know when to stop. It keeps talking until everyone around realizes that what it's saying doesn't make sense. When that man came for me, I could see it immediately. He thought being loud would make him right. He thought if he kept talking fast enough, people wouldn't notice he wasn't saying anything of substance. But I've learned, you don't have to outshout ignorance, you just let it expose itself. Let it talk, let it rant, let it stumble. Because truth doesn't need to fight for space, it waits, and when ignorance finishes performing, that's when truth steps in clean, calm, and undeniable. In that moment, that's when the whole room shifts. You can feel it. The realization settling in that one person came with emotion, and the other came with evidence. Ignorance thrives on reaction. It feeds off chaos. It wants you angry. It wants you loud. It wants you off balance because the second you lose your calm, it thinks it's winning. That's why silence, patience, and precision are your greatest weapons. You don't match energy, you redirect it. You let them exhaust themselves trying to prove a point they don't understand. And then you end it with one line of truth so sharp it cuts through everything they just said. That's how you win without breaking a sweat. You let them talk themselves into defeat, and here's what's wild: ignorance always reveals its weakness when it's forced to speak too long. Because when there's no knowledge behind your words, the performance eventually cracks. You can only fake understanding for so long before the lack of depth shows. That's why I stay patient in those moments. I don't rush. I don't interrupt. I let them display everything they don't know, and when the time is right, I deliver truth so clear, so precise, that there's no way back for them. Because by then, they've already exposed the flaws in their own argument. All I'm doing is turning on the light. You've got to understand ignorance can be loud, but it can't last. It burns hot and fast, but it always burns out. The people who rely on noise and confidence eventually run out of both, because they don't have substance to sustain them. But truth doesn't fade, it stays steady, it doesn't rush to prove itself, because it already knows time is on its side. And the longer the game goes, the clearer it becomes who's playing checkers and who's playing chess. That's the patience of wisdom. You don't have to rush to prove you're right. You just let time, facts, and logic do the work for you. Because when you let ignorance expose itself, you save your energy. You don't get dragged into their storm, you make them stand in your calm. And that calm is what breaks them. They realize you're not moved, not threatened, not even entertained. You're just waiting for the truth to reveal what they try to hide, and that's when you see it, the fear behind the arrogance, the hesitation behind the noise. So I let them talk. I let them try to twist the narrative, because the truth doesn't need a debate partner, it just needs a little time. Eventually, people see the difference between someone who's informed and someone who's performing, between a voice that's speaking from facts and one that's echoing frustration. And when that realization hits, ignorance loses its power all on its own, because nothing exposes foolishness faster than giving it a microphone and a few extra minutes to talk. That's why I never rush into defense when faced with ignorance. I stand still, I observe, I wait. Because I already know how the story ends, the truth always comes out, and ignorance always reveals itself trying to fight it. And when that moment comes, when the noise finally dies down, all that's left standing is the clarity that was there from the beginning. And that's the thing about standing in truth. You don't need approval, you don't need permission, and you sure don't need validation from the loudest person in the room. You stand tall because you know what's right, and you speak up because silence only serves the lie. Every time ignorance tries to challenge intelligence, it loses not because truth yells louder, but because truth lasts longer. You can throw insults, you can twist narratives, you can perform for the cameras, but at the end of the day, facts don't flinch and integrity doesn't fold. So when that debate ended, it wasn't just about who said what, it was about who stood firm when it mattered most. Because that's what strength looks like. Composure under pressure, clarity under noise, courage under fire. And if that makes some people uncomfortable, good. Growth is never comfortable. Speaking truth to power never is. But if we keep doing it, if we keep standing, keep pushing, keep speaking even when they try to drown us out, then ignorance doesn't stand a chance. Because the loudest voice in the room isn't always the strongest, the calmest one, the one built on truth, principle, and purpose, that's the one that changes everything.